UCLA football has done quite a nice job in the transfer portal and maintaining their players. Colorado, on the other hand, has completely dropped the ball, it seems like, with Coach Prime. Can UCLA exploit what's going on in Colorado? Let's talk about it on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, your favorite host here of the Locked On UCLA podcast. Thanks for making your first listen each every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast. It's available on YouTube. You can comment, subscribe, download it. It's free anywhere you get your podcasts. Become an everyday listener of the Locked On UCLA podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Well, this first segment will be quite interesting to discuss. I'm not sure how in-depth we'll go, but you can see, looking across the Pac-12, and while UCLA is only in it for one more year, the establishment in Boulder of Coach Deion Sanders and the recruiting wars that's going to happen on the western side of the United States, despite not being in the same conference for years to come, one wonders, does Colorado show how not to use the transfer portal? And with Chip Kelly's year-in and year-out success of getting guys in the portal, whether it's taking guys from in-conference, like we talked about yesterday, J. Michael Sturdivant, Kyle Ford amongst quite a few, going and grabbing guys from other schools, like Carson Steele is getting a lot of notoriety as a potential Zach Charbonnet-esque replacement for the big-time UCLA tailback. You've got Colin Schlee. The Bruins, I can go up and down the list as to guys who they've gotten, and for the most part, they haven't really dropped the ball in terms of seeing guys leave from the program. But for Colorado, the big story is, yes, you've probably already heard it or seen it, or if you haven't, big-time recruits, lots of players, major overhaul, which is what, Coach Prime had already discussed, saying, hey, we're going to lose a lot of guys. I want to completely change this roster. And what he did at Jackson State's a little bit different than what he's trying to do in Colorado, different levels of college football, but for a variety of different reasons. But I'm looking at a list that I think they're trying to compile of the Colorado football transfers out of last year's roster, and it's looking like upwards of 50 to 55, nearly 60 players. The list keeps growing by the minute, by the second, by the day. It can go back and forth, but Colorado is losing 50 players out. So what makes you wonder, despite Chip Kelly not being the most loquacious or maybe the most media darling-esque, like, say, Coach Prime is, you would think maybe he's put a nice establishment on how to work the portal. And can the Bruins actually exploit Colorado's inability to bring guys in and keep them? Because they've already seen a Jackson State quarterback transfer in and then leave. They've already seen Taylor Upshaw, someone who transferred in from Michigan on January 14th. He wants to leave, and that's someone, an edge rusher, I think UCLA should target and saying, hey, they can probably get some of these products. I believe I missed who the official offensive lineman was, but one of them transferred out of Colorado and said UCLA already has an offer. How many of these players could UCLA exploit? And just to name a few coming out of the portal right now, you've got Nigel Bethel Jr., who I believe transferred from Miami. You've got Mason Maddox, a D lineman, Taylor Upshaw, who is a name I think UCLA should go after defensively, considering they're trying to overhaul their own defense. And there's quite a few different offensive linemen and offensive tackles, and we've seen how UCLA and Chip Kelly can develop these lower star athletes, these guys who don't come in with all the hype and build, even if they're a walk-on, if UCLA doesn't even have as much scholarships available. This is a possibility that UCLA could learn to exploit, considering I think Coach Prime, well, regardless of what you think of him, right now, it seems a lot of negativity, right? They had the spring game and everything in between. And while I've given a lot of jokes and a lot of flack for Chip Kelly and the Bruins not having a spring game, I think it's better to not have a spring game and not lose your entire roster in a complete overhaul. I know they're very different situations, but I think there's some guys like Tavion Beasley, who came in from Jackson State over to Colorado, then he's leaving. Lists of guys, especially defensively, offensive linemen UCLA can try to build going forward. I'm not entirely sure how many skill positions the Bruins would want to go after when it comes to finding players out of Boulder, but I think they could certainly beef up on the offensive line, the defensive line. Taylor Upshaw is just a name I'm really circling in on. I know Nigel Bethel Jr., Tavion Beasley. And while it's going to be weird depending on how guys transfer 2 times within a year, I'm not exactly clear on those rules specifically as I sit here. One wonders how much UCLA can benefit from watching a school within their own conference currently, or seeing all these players that are still available in this transfer portal spring window that they can go snag under the radar, whether it's 1, 2, even if it's not anybody this year, that they can grab and turn it into a sparkling defensive or offensive standout, whether they're on the line, whether they turn into someone who can get more edge rushing, can be that hybrid player that Danton Lynn's looking for defensively, which he said last week during his media availability. So even though they're trying to build lots of offers out for the class of 24, even throwing offers out there for the best class of 25 running back, number 1 in the running back polls. I think I saw one of the UCLA sites. I forget which one. But there's just a lot of available talent. And I think UCLA is showing this is how you successfully work the portal. And Colorado is getting a hands-on lesson as to seeing, all right, this is how it's going. I think the Bruins can certainly take advantage of the maybe missteps or the early just turnover from the Buffalo's roster. And hey, why not go pluck some more players from in conference? I know it could be a little late in the game, but hey, if it's for this year, whether it's for next year, Chip Kelly, I think, has shown the transfer portal. He knows how to efficiently use it despite what UCLA's academic standards might be. He understands that and has proven, hey, I can build together a successful, well put together roster despite having to get players from all sorts of different backgrounds, walks of life, cultures, different schools, different star ratings, and put together a good roster. So I think maybe we can be thankful that Chip Kelly is doing what he's doing. All right, let's get excited there. In the meantime, I'm going to tell you quickly what I think my projections are for Lazar Stefanovic are going to be coming up in this 23-24 season. What's his ceiling? What's a bad season? It's his birthday, so we'll shout him out with a happy birthday. But the best birthday present one could give is buying your family member or anybody a Built Bar. Built Bar is healthy and it tastes amazing. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They've got unbelievable flavors in churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies, and cream. I'm not entirely sure how Built does it, but they are 17 grams in protein, only 4 grams in sugar, only 130 calories. And yet here they are. You can go to Built.com, get specialty flavors, whether it's a 4-bar box, go to your local Walmart, Sam's Club, whatever it may be, get a 13-bar box. There's so many flavors. They just dropped a new flavor. I think it was peanut butter puff, something. They've got puffs, bars. It's the best tasting protein bar ever. Run to Built.com, use a Locked On promo code, LOCKEDON15. Boom, hit that in the promo code, and you'll be good to go on Built.com. Cruising on in Locked On UCLA. Second segment, it won't be too crazy here, but you've got the likes of Lazar Stefanovic. It's his birthday. They tweeted it out either today or whenever you're watching it, is around the recording of this episode. So I figured, hey, what's a potential projection for the UCLA official signee? They finally tweeted out a day or two ago before his birthday that he's officially a Bruin, which means the commit. He's signed. He's heading to school. It's a done deal. The Utah transfer. So let's take a look at those numbers once again for Lazar Stefanovic. And how can he cycle himself in to the UCLA lineup? Well, Stefanovic already talked about with, I believe, the 24/7 Sports UCLA site on their podcast, saying the connection was very important with him and Ivo Samovic when they were coming together, when UCLA even played Utah, right? We see how Chip Kelly looks at tape and gets guys from across the conference. UCLA with Mick Cronin and this time Ivo Samovic kind of dialing it in, using the connections and bringing him over. And he said, hey, I wanted to come to UCLA. I wanted to be contacted by UCLA. After putting my name in the portal, he got his wish. Samovic used the connections, got the international connections there, and now you've got Stefanovic as a Bruin. 10 points per game this year, 35% three-point shooter, 37% from the floor, and 86% from the free throw line. Overall, had 86 assists and 51 turnovers, and about 34 steals. This is a guy that's supposed to be a little long, lanky, has a good vision for passing the basketball, can shoot the three, but is known once in a blue moon to be inefficient from the field. That does not include good shots from inside the arc, but a decent finishing ability near the rim, but can also force shots. So for me, for a former all Pac-12 first all-freshman team member, his numbers grew from his freshman to his sophomore year. Gained 3 more minutes, shot 150 more times in his sophomore year, His free throw percentage went up, his three-point percentage went up by 50%, and his shooting percentage, despite more shots and more makes, went up nearly 20%, and his scoring and his defense all improved, and his assist numbers went up by nearly 1.5 assists per game. His rebounding numbers, a slight increase, just a smidge over 3 rebounds per game. So if that projection continues from freshman to sophomore, sophomore to junior, I know it's a little different playing for the Runnin' Utes as opposed to coming into Mick Cronin's system, but if he's given the green light, Lazar Stefanovic, the latest or one of the latest UCLA incoming players for the 23-24 season, and while we're still waiting on how these spots are going to be filled out, he is expected to be a focal point of the offense and a key part significantly on the defensive end. If he can improve those 3-point numbers to 40% near David Singleton range, then that would be 1, a bonus. 2, something I think Stefanovic needs to work on. That shooting percentage must be above 40%. I think something better would be 42%, which would be a good year-to-year increase if he's given a good amount of quality time working on the shot. Shot selection are things that can help when it comes to getting better shots and making those shots in time. So if he can get his shooting numbers, both the 3-point line and just any other shot overall, get that over 40%, have his field goal percentage be about 42% maybe, that would be a dream scenario. But if he just showcases the increases in averages that he's gone from his freshman to sophomore year and then from sophomore to junior, this could be a guy that explodes on the scene next year, averaging 15 to 16 points, or better yet, even if he's not a 16, 17 point per game scorer with multiple assists and everything, he can add on to his steals total, try and become a much better defender and take over for what UCLA is missing from Jaquez, the reigning Pac-12 Player of the Year, and Clark, the reigning National Defensive Player of the Year. They led the team in steals. Someone's got to take that role, and both those players were 6'7". So Stefanovic is that same build and needs to have that intensity defensively to bring to UCLA what those two are leaving if Clark decides not to come back, and with Jaquez staying in the NBA draft. So the big thing is, can he get those assist numbers to 3 per game? Can he average about 13 points per game and improve his shooting totals and his numbers, considering I think he might play 30 minutes per game this season? He's averaged about 25, 28 minutes per game in his career. This is a perfect opportunity for him to showcase what he can do at the next level, whether it be at the NBA, whether it be professionally overseas, however it works out for Stefanovic after his UCLA career. This is a fantastic chance for him to break out and blossom into a great player. And whether he's the leader or just a significant contributor, we can see how much that UCLA needs to grow with this next year's roster. A lot of youngsters, a lot of unknowns. So there's different roles that need to be filled from the number 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 6 scorers in their roster. The top 6 producers are all currently looking to go to the NBA. And until they fill those spots, this is where Stefanovic has to kind of see where he's at. He maybe has an idea where Mick Cronin and him said, all right, this is what the role would fit for you. I'm not sure if they're making promises or anything like that. That's not how Mick Cronin rolls. But there's probably an idea of what Stefanovic is supposed to do and what he is expected to do coming to UCLA. And we hope it's grow as a player and grow overall and become a huge impact to UCLA's success, even though it doesn't look as promising at the moment with the roster not filled out yet. Still portal guys you can go after. As I mentioned, yes, he had a portal guy in the portal the other day. There's still a Damara that needs to officially be signed if he's coming to UCLA. All sorts of news that still needs to break, but Stefanovic has a chance to truly break out this year. We're going to cruise on in the Locked On UCLA podcast as we talk about, hey, what's next? Well, the NFL draft. And while I'm not going to start with Zach Charbonnet, we're going to talk about this well-beloved, much maligned, the up-and-down quarterback that some Bruin fans love to hate or hate to love in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And while it's unlikely, highly unlikely we see Dorian Thompson-Robinson taken in the first round, close to 0%, there is a good probability we see him taken between days 2 or 3 of the NFL draft. And thinking back on this Throwback Thursday, hey, what's our favorite Dorian Thompson-Robinson moments? Well, I figured let's go back to one November evening of 2021 where the Bruins put up 62 against SC. Thompson-Robinson threw for nearly 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, ran for 2 more scores, accounted for 6 touchdowns overall, a legendary hurdle. One of many can go to the Washington game, I believe the Arizona State game. He had plenty of legendary hurdles in his UCLA career, and yet here he is with a chance to get drafted. And I wanted to read some of the draft prospectus from some of the key websites covering the NFL draft, saying this is what his scouting report is and where Dorian Thompson-Robinson might fall or rise. So it's coming between a mid-late draft round, mid to late draft selection. He could even be selected as high as number 2, depending on how many quarterbacks go off the board early and who needs a quarterback. So some strengths I'm reading from the Pro Football Network website. He's explosive, big-time athlete. These are all things we knew. Can be creative, which means he can leap, he can go to the side. He knows how to use his body in the right way to evade defenders. Has above-average arm strength with the velocity in the short intermediate range, just like Chip Kelly with those crossing patterns, hitting it low. But, has the ability to change his throwing angles, can go through his reads quickly, has somewhat of a natural accuracy to him, and can lead his receivers forward, and his great toughness with a strong competitive spirit. Kind of my words shifting in there. But a lot of the areas improvement, this is kind of similar up and down the board. His arm strength overall is not elite, and his velocity downfield is not that great. His decision-making is inconsistent. I'm assuming you guys in the comments will maybe roast him. Hopefully not. We love Dorian Thompson-Robinson for what he brought in the energy in a rebuilding phase of UCLA football, but you can tell inviting turnover risk is what they wrote on this Pro Football Network draft stock report on Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I think we know what happens there. It's because of his footwork. He can be a little uncontrolled and frantic at times. More, ideas here. And then one interesting thought about DTR I'm reading on this Pro Football Network site is he occasionally lacks situational precision on contested throws, which means depending if it's late in the game and you need to be precise on those bullet passes or need some loft, as some might say, someone streaking down the sideline, or someone might have said Jake Bobo is open in the back of the end zone against Arizona late in that game when the Bruins had a chance at a Hail Mary. It's the situational ability to put a ball on a dime and hit your receiver in stride, fit it through a tight window, where it's easier when you're up 20 or you're up in the fourth quarter and you're just trying to throw it down, or when you need to drive down to go beat SC at home with the ball late in the fourth quarter. I think that is what they are alluding to here. And for the projection from Pro Football Network, it comes down to a mid to late day 3 pick, but I've seen him set as high as day 2, round 2, which is crazy, 2 to rounds 2 through 4. Who knows? He could slide up, he could slide down. He is one of those interesting guys where he could be a spot starter, a quality backup, but he has high athleticism but a small frame, which makes him an intriguing prospect for certain draft boards. Looking at the CBS Sports Network or the CBSSports.com site, they say he has a chance to start. His pro comparison is Connor Shaw, and he's an athletic quarterback, lots of intensity, and if he doesn't succeed in the NFL, it's not because he doesn't want to. It's more because of what he has. He's not incredibly accurate, but an impressive pocket passer is what CBS Sports says, and he's got a bit of a smaller size, and with his uber athleticism and speed and ability to be creative, as Pro Football Network said, he's got some good athleticism that can keep him in the league maybe longer than some might have expected. But one wonders, is that at the quarterback position? Is that as a backup? Or is that to be at a different position overall? So those are all things to check out for Dorian Thompson-Robinson when it comes down to his arm talent's good, but a little underwhelming to multiple sites, multiple scouts. He's got quality athleticism, and he's got a good arm being accurate on the shorter throws. But in the NFL, we've seen a lot of times they like to run and gun and sling it down the field. How can you do that when you need to be accurate in the game's biggest moments when you're throwing it 50 yards down the field, whether it's a slippery Super Bowl grass in Arizona or whatever? He's got a big-time athletic side pushing him. Just a matter of, does he have the skills, the footwork, the mental capacity, and not trying to say anything bad about it, but can he handle the big moments late in games? Those are the critiques on DTR. Despite having some plus qualities, what team is going to get him? I'm not entirely sure. I think I saw there was an article about the San Francisco Chronicle. Maybe the Niners might poke around and get him as a backup, and Kyle Shanahan could try and work with him. Who knows? it's up in the air where DTR goes. And while it can be more fun to project how high Zach Charbonnet will be and how successful his first year or two might be in the NFL, DTR is a unique character in the NFL draft, and I think we should support him any way possible. And I just wonder where he's going to go. Is it high? Is it low? I think he might fall in the draft, but again, it depends who trades up to get a quarterback, whether someone goes and gets C.J. Stroud early. Bryce Young, is he a number one, number two? Those are all things and have domino effects to how far DTR can fall down, or he could be surprisingly picked early in the draft. Who knows? That's why we never knew what we'd get out of DTR in the season. It was always up and down. We don't really know where he's going to fall in the draft. But that is what the scouts and everybody is saying about Thompson-Robinson. He's putting out content. He's even on another podcast talking about his preparation for the draft. Yet here he is, hopefully with a chance to get his name called. And end all be all. That is, as a football player's world, that is as great as it gets. A dream scenario to get your name called during the NFL draft, and hopefully he gets the suit up one day. So we applaud you, DTR. Hopefully you do that. It probably won't be day one. Might be day two, most likely day three. We'll see what happens because there's different types of ideas as to where he'll go. And will he start one day? Well, only time will tell. This has been the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Locked On UCLA. We'll talk to you tomorrow. More Locked On news. We'll see if there's any football developments. If anybody gets picked in the first round from the UCLA football team, if there's any more basketball news, things we got to talk about, we'll go back and forth here on Locked On UCLA. Thanks for making this your first listen. Become an everyday listener of the podcast. Thank you for your support. Subscribe on YouTube. It helps the channel so much. And also download it wherever you listen as well. Thank you for your support. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.